Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. I hope everyone fine and doing well. This video is about 7 Habits of Highly Effective People book summary and takeaways. If you are a newcomer, kindly subscribe it. Let's get into the video. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey is a self-improvement book. It is written on Covey's belief that the way we see the world is entirely based on our own perceptions. In order to change a given situation, we must change ourselves, and in order to change ourselves, we must be able to change our perceptions. We all want to succeed. And one path to success is identifying the habits that can help us on our journey. First habit: be proactive. We're in charge. We choose the scripts by which to live our lives. Use this self-awareness to be proactive and take responsibility for your choices. The first habit that Covey discusses is being proactive. What distinguishes us as humans from all other animals is our inherent ability to examine our own character, to decide how to view ourselves and our situations, and to control our own effectiveness. Put simply, in order to be effective, one must be proactive. Reactive people take a passive stance. They believe the world is happening to them. They say things like, "There's nothing I can do. That's just the way I am." They think the problem is out there, but that thought is the problem. Reactivity becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and reactive people feel increasingly victimized and out of control. Proactive people, however, recognize they have responsibility, which Covey defines as the ability to choose how you will respond to a given stimulus or situation. In order to be proactive, we must focus on the circle of influence that lies within our circle of concern. In other words, we must work on the things we can do something about. The positive energy we exert will cause our circle of influence to expand. Reactive people, on the other hand, focus on things that are in their circle of concern but not in their circle of influence, which leads to blaming external factors, emanating negative energy, and causing their circle of influence to shrink. Key lessons. Challenge yourself to test the principle of proactivity by doing the following. 1. Start replacing reactive language with proactive language. Reactive people, "He makes me so mad." Proactive people, "I control my own feelings." 2. Convert reactive tasks into proactive ones. Begin with the end in mind. Start with a clear destination in mind. Covey says we can use our imagination to develop a vision of what we want to become and use our conscience to decide what values will guide us. Covey emphasizes that our self-awareness empowers us to shape our own lives, instead of living our lives by default or based on the standards or preferences of others. Beginning with the end in mind is also extremely important for businesses. Being a manager is about optimizing for efficiency. But being a leader is about setting the right strategic vision for your organization in the first place, and asking, what are we trying to accomplish? Before we as individuals or organizations can start setting and achieving goals, we must be able to identify our values. This process may involve some re-scripting to be able to assert our own personal values. Re-scripting, Covey explains, is recognizing ineffective scripts that have been written for you, and changing those scripts by proactively writing new ones that are built of your own values. It is also important to identify our center. Whatever is at the center of our life will be the source of our security, guidance, wisdom, and power. Our centers affect us fundamentally. They determine our daily decisions, actions, and motivations, as well as our interpretation of events. However, Covey notes that none of these centers are optimal and that instead, we should strive to be principle-centered. We should identify the timeless, unchanging principles by which we must live our lives. This will give us the guidance that we need to align our behaviors with our beliefs and values. Key lessons. Challenge yourself to test the principle of beginning with the end in mind by doing the following. 1. Visualize in rich detail your own funeral. Who is there? What are they saying about you? About how you lived your life? About the relationships you had? What do you want them to say? Think about how your priorities would change if you only had 30 more days to live. Start living by these priorities. 2. Break down different roles in your life, whether professional, personal, or community, and list 3 to 5 goals you want to achieve for each. 3. Define what scares you. Public speaking? Critical feedback after writing a book? Write down the worst-case scenario for your biggest fear, then visualize how you'll handle this situation. Write down exactly how you'll handle it. Put first things first. In order to manage ourselves effectively, we must put first things first. We must have the discipline to prioritize our day-to-day actions based on what is most important, not what is most urgent. In order to maintain the discipline and the focus to stay on track toward our goals, we need to have the willpower to do something when we don't want to do it. We need to act according to our values rather than our desires or impulses at any given moment. All activities can be categorized based on 2 factors, urgent and important. Take a look at this time management matrix. We react to urgent matters. We spend our time doing things that are not important. That means that we neglect quadrant 2, which is the actually most crucial of them all. If we focus on quadrant 1 and spend our time managing crises and problems, it keeps getting bigger and bigger until it consumes us. This leads to stress, burnout, and constantly putting out fires. If we focus on quadrant 3, we spend most of our time reacting to matters that seem urgent, when the reality is their perceived urgency is based on the priorities and expectations of others. This leads to short-term focus, feeling out of control, and shallow or broken relationships. If we focus on quadrant 4, we are basically leading an irresponsible life. This often leads to getting fired from jobs and being highly dependent on others. Quadrant 2 is at the heart of effective personal management. It deals with things like building relationships, long-term planning, exercising, preparation, all things we know we need to do but somehow seldom get around to actually doing because they don't feel urgent. In order to focus our time in quadrant 2, we have to learn how to say no to other activities, sometimes ones that seem urgent. We also need to be able to delegate effectively. Plus, when we focus on quadrant 2, it means we're thinking ahead, working on the roots, and preventing crises from happening in the first place. This helps us implement the Pareto principle: 80% of your results come from 20% of your time. We should always maintain a primary focus on relationships and results, and a secondary focus on time. Key lessons. Here are some ways you can practice putting first things first. 1. Identify a quadrant 2 activity you've been neglecting. Write it down and commit to implementing it. 2. Create your own time management matrix to start prioritizing. 3. Estimate how much time you spend in each quadrant. Then log your time over 3 days. How accurate was your estimate? Think win-win. In order to establish effective interdependent relationships, we must commit to creating win-win situations that are mutually beneficial and satisfying to each party. Covey explains that there are 6 paradigms of human interaction. 1. Win-win, both people win. Agreements or solutions are mutually beneficial and satisfying to both parties. 2. Win-lose, if I win, you lose. Win-lose people are prone to use position, power, credentials, and personality to get their way. 3. Lose-win, I lose, you win. Lose-win people are quick to please and appease, and seek strength from popularity or acceptance. 4. Lose-lose, both people lose. When 2 win-lose people get together, that is, when 2 determined, stubborn, ego-invested individuals interact, the result will be lose-lose. 5. Win, people with the win mentality don't necessarily want someone else to lose, that's irrelevant. What matters is that they get what they want. 6. Win-win or no deal, if you can't reach an agreement that is mutually beneficial, there is no deal. The best option is to create win-win situations. With win-lose, or lose-win, one person appears to get what he wants for the moment, but the results will negatively impact the relationship between those two people going forward. The win-win or no deal option is important to use as a backup. When we have no deal as an option in our mind, it liberates us from needing to manipulate people and push our own agenda. We can be open and really try to understand the underlying issues. In solving for win-win, we must consider two factors, consideration and courage. Take a look at the following chart. Most people operate with the scarcity mentality, meaning they act as though everything is zero-sum. In other words, if you get it, I don't. People with the scarcity mentality have a very hard time sharing recognition or credit and find it difficult to be genuinely happy about other people's successes. When it comes to interpersonal leadership, the more genuine our character is, the higher our level of proactivity, the more committed we are to win-win, the more powerful our influence will be. To achieve win-win, keep the focus on results, not methods, on problems, not people. Key lessons. Get yourself to start thinking win-win with these challenges. 1. Think about an upcoming interaction where you'll be attempting to reach an agreement or solution. Write down a list of what the other person is looking for. Next, write a list next to that of how you can make an offer to meet those needs. 2. Identify 3 important relationships in your life. Think about what you feel the balance is in each of those relationships. Do you give more than you take? Take more than you give? Write down 10 ways to always give more than you take with each one. 3. Deeply consider your own interaction tendencies. Are they win-lose? How does that affect your interactions with others? Can you identify the source of that approach? Determine whether or not this approach serves you well in your relationships. Write all of this down. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Before we can offer advice, suggest solutions, or effectively interact with another person in any way, we must seek to deeply understand them and their perspective through empathic listening. Let's say you go to an optometrist and tell him that you've been having trouble seeing clearly, and he takes off his glasses, hands them to you and says, "Here, try these, they've been working for me for years." You put them on, but they only make the problem worse. What are the chances you'd go back to that optometrist? Unfortunately, we do the same thing in our everyday interactions with others. We prescribe a solution before we diagnose the problem. We don't seek to deeply understand the problem first. Habit 5 says that we must seek first to understand, then to be understood. In order to seek to understand, we must learn to listen. We can't simply use one technique to understand someone. In fact, if a person senses that we're manipulating her, she will question our motives and will no longer feel safe opening up to us. To listen empathically requires a fundamental paradigm shift. We typically seek first to be understood. Most people listen with the intent to reply, not to understand. After all, Covey points out, communication experts estimate that 10% of our communication is represented by our words, 30% is represented by our sounds, 60% is represented by our body language. When we listen autobiographically, in other words, with our own perspective as our frame of reference, we tend to respond in one of 4 ways. 1. Evaluate, agree or disagree with what is said. 2. Probe, ask questions from our own frame of reference. 3. Advise, give counsel based on our own experience. 4. Interpret, try to figure out the person's motives and behavior based on our own motives and behavior. But if we replace these types of response with empathic listening, we see dramatic results in improved communication. It takes time to make this shift, but it doesn't take nearly as long to practice empathic listening as it does to back up and correct misunderstandings, or to live with unexpressed and unresolved problems only to have them surface later on. The second part of Habit 5 is, then to be understood. This is equally critical in achieving win-win solutions. When we're able to present our ideas clearly, and in the context of a deep understanding of the other person's needs and concerns, we significantly increase the credibility of your ideas. Key lessons. Here are a few ways to get yourself in the habit of seeking first to understand. 1. Next time you're watching two people communicating, cover your ears and watch. What emotions are being communicated that might not come across through words alone? Was one person or the other more interested in the conversation? Write down what you noticed. 2. Next time you give a presentation, rooted in empathy. Begin by describing the audience's point of view in great detail. What problems are they facing? How is what you're about to say offering a solution to their problems? Synergize. By understanding and valuing the differences in another person's perspective, we have the opportunity to create synergy, which allows us to uncover new possibilities through openness and creativity. The combination of all the other habits prepares us for habit 6, which is the habit of synergy, or when 1 + 1 = 3 or more and the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. For example, if you plant two plants close together, their roots will commingle and improve the quality of the soil, so that both plants will grow better than they would on their own. Synergy allows us to create new alternatives and open new possibilities. It allows us as a group to collectively agree to ditch the old scripts and write new ones. So how can we introduce synergy to a given situation or environment? Start with habits 4 and 5, you must think win-win and seek first to understand. Once you have these in mind, you can pool your desires with those of the other person or group. And then you're not on opposite sides of the problem, you're together on one side, looking at the problem, understanding all the needs, and working to create a third alternative that will meet them. What we end up with is not a transaction, but a transformation. Both sides get what they want, and they build their relationship in the process. By putting forth a spirit of trust and safety, we will prompt others to become extremely open and feed on each other's insights and ideas, creating synergy. The real essence of synergy is valuing the differences, the mental, emotional, and psychological differences between people. After all, if two people have the same opinion, one is unnecessary. When we become aware of someone's different perspective, we can say, "Good. You see it differently. Help me see what you see." Synergy allows you to value the differences in other people as a way to expand your perspective, sidestep negative energy and look for the good in others, exercise courage in interdependent situations to be open and encourage others to be open, catalyze creativity and find a solution that will be better for everyone by looking for a third alternative. Key lessons. 1. Make a list of people who irritate you. Now choose just one person. How are their views different? Put yourself in their shoes for 1 minute. Think and pretend how it feels to be them. Does this help you understand them better? Now next time you're in a disagreement with that person, try to understand their concerns and why they disagree with you. The better you can understand them, the easier it will be to change their mind, or change yours. 2. Make a list of people with whom you get along well. Now choose just one person. How are their views different? Now write down a situation where you had excellent teamwork and synergy. Why? What conditions were met to reach such fluidity in your interactions? How can you recreate those conditions again? Sharpen the saw. To be effective, we must devote the time to renewing ourselves physically, spiritually, mentally, and socially. Continuous renewal allows us to synergistically increase our ability to practice each habit. Habit 7 is focused around renewal, or taking time to sharpen the saw. It surrounds all of the other habits and makes each one possible by preserving and enhancing your greatest asset, yourself. There are 4 dimensions of our nature, and each must be exercised regularly, and in balanced ways. Physical dimension. The goal of continuous physical improvement is to exercise our body in a way that will enhance our capacity to work, adapt, and enjoy. Spiritual dimension. The goal of renewing our spiritual self is to provide leadership to our life and reinforce your commitment to our value system. Mental dimension. The goal of renewing our mental health is to continue expanding our mind. Social or emotional dimension. The goal of renewing ourselves socially is to develop meaningful relationships. As we focus on renewing ourselves along these 4 dimensions, we must also seek to be a positive scripter for other people. We must look to inspire others to a higher path by showing them we believe in them, by listening to them empathically, by encouraging them to be proactive. The real beauty of the 7 habits is that improvement in one habit synergistically increases our ability to improve the rest. Renewal is the process that empowers us to move along an upward spiral of growth and change, of continuous improvement. Key lessons. 1. Make a list of activities that would help you renew yourself along each of the 4 dimensions. Select one activity for each dimension and list it as a goal for the coming week. At the end of the week, evaluate your performance. What led you to succeed or fail to accomplish each goal? 2. Commit to writing down a specific Sharpen the Saw activity in all 4 dimensions every week, to do them, and to evaluate your performance and results. I hope you liked this video, you learned something from this video. Thanks for watching this video. If you are not yet subscribed, kindly subscribe it. Give me a support, comment your thoughts in the comment box. Follow me on Instagram, link in the description. Stay connected, #LearnSomething. Bye.